Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being in here on such a beautiful, well, I like it, a little cooler summer evening. I'm Craig Cassar, the Ward 12 Councillor. Who is here at the Art Center for the first time? Anybody? Couple? Okay, well, welcome. There's so many great things to see here, from theater to music and all kinds of things, seniors and youth. And there are advertisements around here. Look it up. There's lots of great things to see. But today we're here to talk about roads, one of the most common topics we hear about. So I have some expert city staff here in the front row, which I'll introduce shortly, who are going to go through a presentation on roads and road maintenance and all topics related to that. We'll get through a couple presentations and then we'll do questions afterwards. So for those of you who have been here to previous town halls, and I see some familiar faces, you are familiar with that. Okay, just a brief land acknowledgement, as we do before all of our town halls. And you can read the specific land acknowledgement on there. I won't read it by rote, but I just want to acknowledge the Woodland Cultural Center and identify that as an opportunity just down the road in Brantford. That is basically a museum now to showcase the art, culture, language, and of course history of First Nations people, specifically Haudenosaunee. So that is just off the highway in Brantford. It's an opportunity to continue to learn as we move down our path to reconciliation. Just a quick look at the previous town halls we've had. If there's a topic on here you may have missed, it is available on my website. You can go there and see the slides or the presentation. We've covered a lot of things, most recently city finances last month. And then looking forward on the next slide, we have, of course, today we have roads, and we are working to pull together a town hall on the Ancaster Village Core, specifically around development. Don't have a date for you yet, but when we pull that together, we will let everyone know via the normal channels. And I would be remiss if I did not mention Craig's Current, my monthly newsletter. If you don't subscribe, we put a whole bunch of information in there every month on things around the city, things in Ward 12, community safety, and so on. So you can just do like this gentleman's doing here and take a shot of the QR code, or you can just go to craigcassar.ca. And all past issues, we were almost up to 60 now, are available on the website. Okay, so brief agenda. I mentioned two presentations. First, we're going to have from transportation our roadway maintenance. So Peter's going to come up here to do the presentation. We have Adam to support on questions too. And then from engineering services, we have Dipankar and Greg, who will do a presentation following them.
Okay, good evening, everybody. My name is Peter Sniolis. I'm the manager of roadway maintenance for the city of Hamilton. And before my colleagues in engineering services present their portion about capital rehabilitation and the plan for roadways, I'll go over roadway rehabilitation specific to roadway maintenance and just give an overview of what we actually do here at the city. So in terms of what we're responsible for in roadway maintenance, our section, we have about 350 staff. Specific to asphalt, our purpose is to maintain the roadways in a good state of repair. And that is roadways, sidewalks, MUPs, anything within the actual road right-of-way to the minimum maintenance standards, which is OREG 23902. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But in terms of asphalt, we do a few things for the roads around the city of Hamilton. We do roadway inspection, pothole repair, road resurfacing, mill and pave, and crack sealing. And I'll get into a bit of that in a bit. Okay, specific to roadway patrol. So maybe we'll talk a bit about road classification. So all roads across the city are broken into a class of highway as defined under OREG 23902. So the higher the speed, the higher the volume, the higher the class of the actual roadway. So if you can imagine class 1 roadway, there's none in Ancaster, but the Link and the Red Hill Valley Parkway would be a class 1 road. And so those types of roads we do patrol with our internal staff 3 times once a week. A class 5 roadway, which might be more of a residential or Amberley, for instance, we patrol once every 30 days with our staff. Now, specific to potholes, defined under the actual regulations. So they're provincial standards that establish minimum maintenance requirements for roads. And the city uses these to prioritize repairs across the entire city. So again, back to the class of road, under the regulation, each pothole across the city has a defined, if it meets a defined criteria for the area and the depth. So if you find a pothole on the the link, for instance, we would have 4 days to repair it once we become made aware of that deficiency. So a lot of the times we are proactive with our group out there patrolling the roads, and we will pin these deficiencies before they ever get called into the city, and we'll repair them within 4 days. And likewise, for a Class 5 roadway, we would technically have up to 30 days to repair them. However, anything that is defined this size or greater, typically we're there the same day or the next day at the latest, usually. Just a little graphic here about how potholes are actually formed. It'll tie into the next few slides. So water actually seeps through small cracks in the roadway. Once it gets under there, it's typically only over the winter months. It'll freeze. When it freezes, it expands, then it'll melt. And that cyclical process happens over and over, and eventually a void is left under the actual pavement. So after that, traffic will go over top of that. And again, that cyclical process will create a pothole. So how do we find potholes, and how is our pothole repair completed across the city? So like I mentioned, we do have road patrol. We've got 6 staff that are driving across the city consistently throughout the entire year, and they'll identify any potholes we do find and flag them, and we'll go out and repair them. Additionally, we do have staff in other departments, our group, that do find them, again, pin them, flag them, and we'll go out and repair. As well as councillor's office, maybe if anybody's called the councillor's office, submitted them, we do hear from the councillor's office, and we do prioritize and repair those as required. And one of the biggest things we do rely on is the customer call center, or Ask City. I've got a link to that in the end, where residents do call in, report it. We do create a service request for all of those. We do put it in the key, and we prioritize repairs and try to get them done as fast as we can. And then we've got 2 types of repairs we do complete across the city. We've got temporary and permanent. Temporary is more aligned with anything around the winter time. So that's when we got to fill a hole quickly before the next storm comes around, and it'll look more like the image on the right there. And then we've got a little bit more of a permanent repair, which is typically done outside the winter months. That's where we'll actually saw cut the asphalt, put a full depth repair back in place, tamp it, and move on to the next one. And a good example of that would have been Russo Road. We just did 2 of those patches there leading onto the link. And one thing I'd like to point out is you might see our crews go out and fill a pothole, miss a couple smaller ones, and drive to the next one. The reason we're doing that is to satisfy the requirements of the minimum maintenance standards. So we will fill that pothole, that crew will move on to the next one and repair that. But we also do have crews that'll have a hot box, and they'll take an entire road and they'll fill every single pothole as they do go along that road. So we will blitz roads, but we also do that in conjunction with filling specific potholes. And crack sealing. So tying back to that image I just showed. So crack sealing is a process we typically do in October of every year. It's typically done on roadways that are about 3 to 8 years old, and it just depends if it's a full depth replacement of the road or just a mill and pave. So the purpose of this is just sealing the road so water can't enter it, and it extends the life of the roadways, prevents any potholes from forming, and slows crack expansion as well. And then resurfacing. So this is the one we wish we could do a lot of. This is just mill and pave, and this is us on the link. So our group does that every single year, where we shut down the link, pave it over the weekend. So when a roadway surface is worn, cracked, in conjunction with engineering services here, we have a list of roads on which we will remove the top layer of asphalt, put a new layer of asphalt on top of it, and that addresses any potholes, deficiencies, or cracks across the city. And it really does extend the life of the road with minimal impacts to most residents. And then specific to Ward 12, our group, the city here, is doing, these are the roads we're going to be resurfacing this year. So we're putting just over $2 million into Ward 12 and doing approximately 27 kilometers of roadway across the city. So I'll leave this up for a bit. This is basically the last slide, but this is the mill and pave process we're doing this year in roadway maintenance. I can always come back to that later, but again, so again, we're roadway maintenance. If you do see a pothole, you do see a deficiency, Ask City or pothole at hamilton.ca are fantastic resources. And we do truly appreciate anybody that does call those in. We do prioritize and we do take care of them and we do address those potholes. So happy to answer any questions after, but I'll throw it to my colleague Dipankar in engineering.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dipankar Sharma. I am the Acting Director for Engineering Services. And we're going to take you through how we think about roads, how we inspect roads, how we plan roads, and how much we invest in roads. So with me is my colleague, Greg Boozman, who is the Senior Project Manager with roads. So here's the plan for tonight. So first things first, we're going to give you an overview of the road network. We'll show you a ward map for Ward 12. We're going to talk about all the roads in Ward 12. You will probably see your road on the map. The second is road maintenance. Peter Sinolis, he touched in deep about road maintenance. We're going to see when we inspect roads, how do we make the decision between doing some maintenance work versus some capital work, which is more about reconstruction and spending the big dollar value. Third is where the money is spent and how is the money spent. So how much money does the city actually spend on roads and what is our backlog? We're going to have a discussion around that. And then we're going to talk about roads across Hamilton, and somewhat we're going to touch roads in Canada and how they have been underfunded over the years and why the condition is what the condition is of the road network. And then we're just going to talk about what is planned for the next few years and the big ticket item. Thank you. So this is the map for Ward 12. You can also find this on the city's website. Every single segment in the ward, block to block, is on this map. As you can see, it's a big ward. So hence we tried fitting it on one slide, and it's not easy to fit all of it. So Ward 12 is big. One of the biggest component that you see on this map is a rural component. So you see maps, you see country roads such as Jerseyville, Powerline, Butter Road, and so on. Most of them are yellow and blue. Second thing that you notice is a dense cluster of roads right on the right-hand side, right at the bottom. So this is the urban area for Ancaster. The important thing I want you to take away from this map is these colors that we have here are not really guesswork. These colors are coded using data, using inspection data. So everything here comes from real measured data in real time. So jumping on to our next slide. So this is a zoomed in version of it. And we're looking right now at the Ancaster urban core. So we're going to leave this slide for a second. If you find your street, please go ahead. Notice that there's a lot more yellow and orange here than the rural map that we had. That means the condition of this is between fair and poor, and there's a bit of red here too. One of the things to know in Ancaster specifically, which is very local to this area, is when Ancaster was being built, the way subdivisions were planned, a lot of subdivisions were built together. They were built in waves and they were built together. So when they age, they also age together. Once the subdivisions are aging, the roads are aging, the way it helps is, so you will have pockets of subdivisions and pockets of roads that need to be coordinated and that can help us put all the work together. So there's some good news here where we can recognize patterns and we can put all the roads together in one neighborhood having similar type of work. We're going to talk about what different type of applications we do later in the slides. What that means is it helps us in getting better prices. So you have one contract, you have one contractor looking at a bigger section of the road, and hence the mobilization cost is lower, and we get better price per street. So instead of having these roads spread out and looking at different divisions. You will also see main roads like Wilson, Golf Link, and Mohawk. These are mostly in blue and greens. And we can talk about how these roads are prioritized and how these roads are maintained in a different process. So if you see your street and it's in orange, I know it's super frustrating. You see all the potholes that you travel through. Hold that thought in your head. When we go through the rest of the presentations, we're going to hopefully take you through this journey and show you why these roads are orange and why they're red and how we're going to plan to improve them. So let's, before we get into the minutiae of things, let's talk about the scale of Hamilton roads. So we measure roads per lane kilometers. So what that means is 1 kilometer of lane for a 2-lane road means 2 lane kilometers, right? So if you have a kilometer of 4 lanes, that means we're going to talk about 4 lane kilometers, right? So we all are on the same page. So City of Hamilton has currently 6,500 lane kilometers. So to put that in perspective, it's a fair way to measure if you were to travel in a single lane kilometer from here to Vancouver and back, and then go back to Vancouver and halfway back to your home. That's how many lane kilometers of roadway we have in Hamilton. The reason is Hamilton is an older city and it has a lot of new parts coming up. So Ward 12 shares near about 984 kilometers of this network. It's about 15% of the entire city. Now, what really shapes Ward 12 is 61% of Ward 12 is rural. What that means is when you talk about rural roads, there's fewer cars, often heavier traffic. So you will see a lot more trucks, a lot more farm equipment. You will also see heavy traffic sometimes. There's not a lot of curbs on these roads, and there's no storm sewer. So these roads are slightly easier to maintain, slightly easier to work on. And when you see us talking about the urban core, which has curves, which has slightly lesser load, which has cars instead of trucks, but also has underground network. So how does Ward 12 stack up against the rest of Hamilton? So one of the things that we do as part of my team is, for Greg's team, is we go inspect each and every lane kilometer of Hamilton's road. And we give that overall rating, which is called the OCI. And we're going to get into that formula too in the next few slides. So Ward 12, the blue bar in the middle, sits at near about 67.5 OCI. So if you are thinking about 1 to 100, we're at 67.5. So now I want to be careful about this number. You know, as much as you think it is the second best to Ward, I think it's Ward 11, but it's an overall weighted average, right? So doesn't mean if your street is orange in color or in red, we do have a massive rural area, so that averages out. Second, a higher average doesn't mean the wards will get ignored when we talk about the big funding, right? We don't allocate money based on the overall condition of a ward. How we allocate money using the capital dollars of the tax dollars is based on the condition of the road, the traffic, and what other assets are below the road, such as water mains, storm sewers, and where the road is located. So what this chart tells you, taken as a whole, Ward 12 network is comparatively in a healthy shape, but we still need to do our job in keeping it in that healthy shape. So now we're going to talk about how do we calculate the overall condition index. So what you see here is an OCI, which is the overall condition index. That is how we measure the roads. So they go from 0 to 100. 0, well, we don't really have anything with 0. That would be a gravel road. But what we do have is our conditions near about 40, 30 to 50. That means the road is in very, very poor condition. And when a road is replaced, or as Peter was mentioning, shave and paves, or when a road is resurfaced, that brings up the OCI to 90 to 95 levels. How do we measure RI? So the formula that you see here is a service condition index and a RI, which is a roughness index. So we have a really cool truck. I find it cool. What it does, it has near about 200 sensors into it. And it goes around each and every lane kilometer for Hamilton. So it's like the Google car, which has a camera at the top, but ours has sensors underneath. And we measure potholes, we look at the condition of the road. So sometimes if there are potholes and then there's the surface of the road is rough, they might be rated the same because the rideability is different, right? So if you ever are driving on a road that has been grinded down to the base, you will hear in your car, you will feel the bumps more. So that's the roughness that I'm talking about. So this is where we look at how these score measure against the map. So if you go to City of Hamilton's website, there's a map that shows what color of roads are in. So starting from the top, any road which was recently done will have a very good OCI, which is 86 to 100. And what that means is that we're not leaving that road to climb it. We're going to do some preventative maintenance on it. So Peter talked about crack sealing and pothole repairs. So if you do see any cracks, it's very similar to what we do on our driveways if we have asphalt driveways, or if we have concrete, we go seal it. So that would be part one. The second is when a road is in that condition of 71 to 85, which is preventative maintenance. Again, it's a very similar strategy that we apply. The cracks do get bigger. So we're still looking at crack sealing. Then we get into a road that has a slightly poor condition, which is from 50 OCI to 76. So going back to the definition of OCI, it's overall condition index. So this is where you will see an overlay done, a shave and pave, or we're going to talk about a bit more practical terms that we use are what is called as operational resurfacing. And then for roads that are in slightly more poor condition from 41 OCI to 55, that's where we will grind the road all the way down to the base. And when you grind the road to the base, you will see some cracks that are on the base. So we'll repair those cracks. We will level the base if the base is in really bad condition. And then we'll build the road up. And the final one where it costs the most amount of money is the very poor one. And it's the reconstruction. So this is where most of the coordination happens. And when we are looking at reconstruction of a road, we're looking at ripping everything below it. So we're going to change the sewer, we're looking at storm, we're looking at water main replacement, the whole 9 years. Coming out of those OCIs, these are few of the strategies that we apply. So the first picture that you see here is called operational resurfacing, very similar to shave and pave. This is where we would mill the road down. If we can catch an asset, such as road, in that particular window of OCI, is the best value spent. Then comes road rehab, where you will have more safety enhancements to the road, where you will see raised cycling paths and sidewalks extended. And the last is the road reconstruction, where you see a big pipe that is a water main that's about to go in. So three different project streams, very different applications depending upon the road. and very different timelines as well. So I'm going to hand this over to Greg, who's going to talk about the deficit that we have in Hamilton. Greg.
Good evening. My name is Greg Wisman, and I'm a senior project manager in the Public Works Department. And my team works with roads all day. And so it's great to see some enthusiasm and see residents who are also interested in roads. Thanks for coming out. I'm going to talk a little bit about the infrastructure deficit, spend a few moments on that. So following World War II, there was a baby boom here in Canada. And while people were out busy making babies, tremendous amounts of money were also invested in the country to upgrade roads, to build new roads, highways, subdivisions, buildings, bridges. And it was a time of tremendous growth and lots of money was invested. And this went on for quite a few years. It went on through the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and tremendous amounts of money were spent on building all of this infrastructure. Unfortunately, there was no money set aside for maintaining all of these assets. So they were all built, but very little money spent on maintaining them. And slowly they started to deteriorate. And the funding for keeping these assets in their same state just did not match how fast they were degrading. And so hence this infrastructure deficit was created. And it's a legacy problem that we live with right until today. It's been going on for some 50 to 60 years, and we are trying to address it now. So I want to talk a little bit about how at the City of Hamilton we fund roads. We have two main funding sources. We have our tax-supported capital budget, and we have a rates budget. The tax-supported capital budget comes from property taxes, and it also comes from federal taxes, federal gas taxes, and a little bit of development charges. And that money is used for building the actual road, the actual asphalt, the granular base, the curbs, the sidewalks. And the infrastructure, the subsurface infrastructure, such as sewers and water, that is paid for through the rates budget at the City of Hamilton. And the rates budget is derived of revenues from your water bill, water and sewer bill. And so these two funding sources are used to build our roads here in the city. So if we were to take all of the linear road assets in the City of Hamilton and have to rebuild them today, they have a value of about $5.9 billion. It's quite a large number. Of that, about 4.6 or 7 billion is the actual pavement portion of the roads. Now, to maintain that asset, that huge asset with a value of 4.9 billion, we need to spend roughly $110 million annually if we want to maintain those in their current state. 110 million translates in a 10-year cycle to about $1.1 billion. Unfortunately, we are not spending anywhere near 110 million. We're spending roughly a third of that. Right now, we're spending about 34% toward what we should be spending. And it's just to put that in perspective. So for every dollar we should be spending to renew our roads, rejuvenate our roads, we're only spending about 34 cents. What's happened? We formed this huge gap in spending. But that's the bad news. The good news is we are working on resolving this issue. We are increasing spending gradually. So in 2020, we only spent 59 million on transportation, on our transportation network. Last year, we spent 88 million. So there's been a tremendous increase. Now, I just want to point out that's the entire transportation network. That includes roads, bridges, all of our transportation assets. We're only about a third of that actually goes to the roads. So you might wonder, why don't we solve this big gap, this funding gap? Why don't we do something about it? And the answer is we are, but we have to move slowly. We can't do it overnight. And some of the reasons we can't do it overnight is because we need more information on asset management. It's a moving target, so we're slowly working on getting more information so we can nail that down. And it just wouldn't be fair to the taxpayers if we tried to solve this funding gap overnight. It has to be something that's done in a very over a long period of time, such as a 10-year cycle is what we're trying to work with. And lastly, if somehow we magically got all the money that we can solve our funding gap, we could never deliver that many assets and fix that many roads and create that many construction projects in a short period of time. We don't have the staff to coordinate all these projects, and there's not enough contractors in the Golden Horseshoe that could ever execute that much work. So it has to be phased in over approximately a 10-year period. So how are we going to do it? Well, number one, we're going to prioritize the life cycle of our roads. So it's very important that we repair a road at the proper point in its life cycle. There's optimum points to repair it. You don't want it to be too far deteriorated where it's going to cost a lot of money. And you don't want to do it too soon when the road's still quite serviceable. So we want to optimize that. We're also going to work on increasing our data on asset management. We want to know how fast roads deteriorate and hit them at the right point. And our corporate asset management team is working on perfecting that. And the other thing is we're going to look at some of our assets and determine whether or not we still need them. There might be certain assets in the city that are no longer required. And also we're going to look at service levels. What level do we want our roads to be at? Do we want them all to be perfect? Or can we do with them being at maybe a less than perfect stage? And lastly, as mentioned, we're going to increase our funding to try and fix this large infrastructure deficit. So here in Ward 12, we have undertaken quite a few significant projects. In 2026, that's this year, we're spending about $4.6 million on Jerseyville Road and Woodhill Road culverts. Next year, we've got some retaining walls and culverts going in, and we've got the big Gulf Links Road project. We're going to be spending about $7.6 million in your ward. And in 28, we're looking at spending about $30 million on Mohawk and on the Highway 52 and Power Line roundabout. And lastly, one of the biggest projects we have in 29 and beyond is going to be Gardner Road. That's a huge project we're going to be doing here in Ward 12. We're going to be spending about $58 million in the ward. So not only are we working in Ward 12, we've been working throughout the city. Some significant projects we've hammered out lately is York Boulevard. As we speak, we've got Highway 400, we've got Bridge 451 on Dundas in Waterdown in construction. We've got, we completed some work on Mountain Brow, Westdale, Highway 8 was another big project, and Olympic Drive. So we've been quite busy reconstructing roads, resurfacing roads, and all sorts of maintenance activities across the city. And that's the end of my presentation, and we're open for questions from myself or any one of these other gentlemen.